Hello and welcome back to Rey's Gaming and more Wilds. With the introduction of Arch-Tempered Rey Dau, we have new equipment and meta change potential. I've been running through the build updates for each weapon that I cover, and now finally here to talk about Switch Axe. Now interestingly, the update has affected Switch Axe quite a lot less than other weapons, but there's absolutely a new set to consider. Before we do get into that though, Josh deserves his credit for putting together the new build option and working out the math to compare and actually back it up. While I of course play the Switch Axe and can talk about what it needs with him, he's the veteran that decides the set based on the math that he does. So I'm just presenting it today, but with that said, let's get into it. We'll begin as always then by taking a look at the new gear and what's so good about it. This is the new Rey Dau Gamma set featuring its Latent Power, the Rey Dau Voltage set, which actually is the same set bonus that you can get from regular Rey, and then the new Lord Soul, which is actually awesome. For individual pieces, the helm is the one that stands out the most, with one level of weakness exploit and maximum might and stamina surge as a bonus. It's pretty decent, with a 3 decoration slot. The issue with the set in general is that while it has great skills and levels on it, you can see on this one, the decoration slots are less than desirable. The waist being the biggest offender for that, but you do get a lot of skill levels. You're going to see a lot of people running 3-piece though, and for good reason. Firstly, you have the 2 or 4-piece bonus of Thunderous Roar. So Latent Power lasts 2 minutes. At level 1 Thunderous Roar with a 2-piece set, you get 30 seconds more. At a 4-piece of this Thunderous Roar bonus, you get 1 minute and 30 seconds on top of the usual 2-minute timer. Lord Soul is really good though and worth investing in because it just gives you a lot of raw for the whole fight. The idea is that it's going to boost your attack, lower your defense until you take a lethal hit, which it will essentially ignore for you and then begin boosting your defense and element resistance. To be specific though, that attack boost is a percent of your base roll right now on your weapon. So it's 5% of whatever your weapon actually has. So looking at your stereotypical best setup, it's going to be an Artian weapon with 7 total attack boosts or infusions, bringing you to 225 base roll. 5% of that 225 base roll is 11.25. So for the whole hunt, because obviously we don't plan on carting, 11 raw is really good. A lot of sets run burst 1 just for the raw that it provides, and that provides 8 raw by comparison. So it's actually very good as a bonus. Then you have the controversial Latent Power, because some people just don't like the idea of this skill, so let's just quickly explain it so you understand it for the purpose of these builds today. Latent Power, as you can see, it gives you a lot of affinity and reduces stamina depletion by a lot, even at level 1. So when Latent Power activates, it's 2 minutes of its uptime. At 2-piece, that'll be 2.5 minutes. At 4-piece of Array, that's going to be 3.5 minutes, which is pretty insane. To activate Latent Power though, all you need is to be near a large monster for 2 minutes, and then it just activates. However, it also activates if you take roughly 133 damage. So let's say you're just fighting a monster, Latent Power is going to activate without you doing anything after that 2-minute period. Based on our testing then, that's going to be at least half the fight, and often more than that. Then you might activate it on top of that because you took some damage, well then its uptime becomes even better. The issue with that is that it kind of suggests like, oh yeah, you'll need to get hit now and then to have better uptime. And while true, even being very unkind and assuming a 33% uptime for Latent Power, the affinity benefits are still very good. And realistically, we're not all speedrunners. We do get hit sometimes. And then the value of the skill, it just goes up. And if you really want to min-max, you could pop on a Corrupted Mantle before actually starting the fight while you approach the monster, let it drain your health. That can also activate Latent Power. And you see speedrunners doing that now if they're running Latent Power in their set. It's just much like Counter-Strike, some people don't like the idea of taking damage to activate a power. So what we're going to be doing is presenting 2 builds today to give you the option to decide. We begin with the weapon and the quick topic that is the usual. Artian weapon with the one-size-fits-all power or blast, as we can see here, or a very valid light investment on an element, where you're still getting the 225 base raw because you're still doing all that attack infusion attack boost, but then instead of getting a bit of power or blast, you're getting a pretty decent amount of element. The reason I have a dragon version of this is because the one that it's worth it to do for is Zoshir as a target. There aren't great element hit zones across the board for tier 3 monsters, but Zoshir stands out as a worthy option with 30 element hit zones on their exposed head. And personally, I'm not going through all that effort just for the minor efficiency that's going to provide. I will also say that the fastest Switch Axe clear right now against Arch-Tempered Rey Dau, as I make this video anyway, is using a blast Switch Axe. So it's your choice to make. Either way, you get your Artian set up with attack infusions and attack boosts, 4 of which, and then 1 sharpness boost. Then whether you're running a paralysis, blast, or even potentially the element that the monster's weak to, that's your call to make. But I like paralysis for the free DPS window that provides. It's like a guaranteed full release, which is always really helpful. Now when it comes to offensive decorations, this is another choice for you to make. Technically, the best DPS you could run would be a 3 crit boost decoration and then a 2 or 3 crit boost decoration in another slot to bring you to a total of 5 critical boost. This would increase the raw critical hit damage by 40% compared to 34% of just level 3. The problem with that is that you're sacrificing the benefits of something else, such as razor sharp, handicraft, or some other sharpness help, and at which point you will have sharpness issues during a fight. However, if you're killing a monster so quick that it's not an issue, well then yeah, crit boost is technically the most DPS you could get. But as you can see, I prefer to run Focus with 1 level of Handicraft on it. Focus is going to help us build up the amped state a lot quicker, and as I'm using Power Vials quite a lot, this really helps build that amped state faster, and I personally think it's worth it. In this place, you could instead use Razor Sharp though, to just solve your sharpness issues, so it's your choice to make. I think the 3 levels of Focus really make playing the weapon much better. Finally, the non-negotiable you must run this is Power Prolonger 3. You need this. This is going to increase the amount of time your amped state is up, and that's allowing you to do the most important thing, full release slashing. It's going to double the amount of time that it's actually lasting, so this is required. With that, you can get 1 level handicraft off the back of it to help sharpness, which is awesome. Alright, here are the 2 sets then. We have the Title Update 1 Max DPS set that's focused on Agitator, and then we have the new Arch-Tempered version, Max DPS, which has slightly more effective raw, but engages with latent power, which you might not like. So, we're presenting both sets for you to choose between. We're going to present the math to show you the difference between them, and then it's up to you what you want to run. Personally, I am using the Latent Power set. But let's start with the Title Update 1 Max DPS set, all about Agitator, and as you can see, 4-piece gore. We have Gore 4-piece in all in beta, and then we have Zoshia Chest also in beta. This provides this skill list using these decorations. But I should also highlight the fact that we're using Counter Charm for the 3 levels of Counter Strike. Here's the skill list, here's the decorations. Full Agitator, 4 Constitution, full Counter Strike, Max Might Antivirus, bit of evade window, the 1 burst, 1 coalescence is just built in, and a 1 flinch free. This provides you with a 4-piece of Gore Magala, of course, providing you with a Frenzy proc, 2 lean into antivirus, but also giving you that extra raw from Gore 4-piece, which is 15. The whole Gore 4-piece or 2-piece has been a known meta for quite some time and remains a very good option for Switch Axe. But don't forget that Switch Axe is one of the better weapons for consistently activating Counter-Strike. While most people can just take a hit or barrel bomb themselves to activate this every 45 seconds at level 3, we can just land a sword counter and just keep this up the whole time. Agitator is going to give you that raw and then also affinity while it's active, at a minimum half the fight. But to be honest, the average uptime is about 60-65%, so we will be basing the math off that. So let's take a look at the math to see what the effective raw is and then compare it to the next set. We have 225 base raw, and this is getting 25 from Counter-Strike 3, 15 from the Gore 4-piece, and then 13 from Agitator 5 with that 65% assumed uptime. We also have Burst 1, so that's another 8 raw there, bringing us to a pretty decent 286. We multiply that by 32% thanks to white sharpness, bringing us to 378. For affinity, we have 70% reliable total thanks to the Max Might, the Artian base, antivirus, and then we're getting 10% from Agitator 5 with that assumed 65% uptime. So 70% affinity, and we're basing this math off max DPS. We'll compare it fairly with max DPS with the latent power. So we're assuming 5 crit boost here, even though that's not what I would recommend for normal gameplay. But for the consistency of the math, 5 crit boost, 40% damage increase, but with 70% affinity. So it's more like 28% damage increase. So we'll multiply that by the 378 to bring us to 484 effective raw, which is still super good. It's the same set as last time. It's going to be one of your best options, and you won't have to think about anything. Agitator will just do its thing whenever the monster enrages. So if you want to keep using this, fair enough. But you can get more effective raw. So let's look at the Latent Power set. So here it is. We're using Rey Dau 3-piece from the Gamma, the Arch-Tempered pieces, and then 2-piece of Gore to still get Frenzy. So it's the Gamma Helm, which is an incredible slot as we talked about. We have the Gore chest piece in beta, with the Gamma gloves and the waist, and finally the Gore legs in beta as well, with still the Counter Charm to get that Counter-Strike levels. Here are the decorations to achieve the skill list. We heavily invest in decorations to get 5 agitator still, but now we have full counter-strike, max might, antivirus, and 2 levels of latent power. With this, you also get the really nice benefits of 2 evade window to make evading better, but also evade extender for repositioning. Anyway, the sacrifice for all of this is just 1 weakness exploit compared to, say, your usual 5. We still have 1 constitution, 1 stamina surge, and the flinch free, which are quite handy. For set bonuses, this is going to get you Thunderous Roar to get 30 seconds increased time on latent power, 2 piece of gore to activate the frenzy so we can benefit from antivirus, and lastly, Lord Soul, the Guts Tenacity. As I've explained, this is going to boost your attack until you cart, where it then increases your defenses. So we expect that increased attack the whole way. It's your base roar of your weapon increased by 5%. On a perfect artian, that's 11.25 roar. So let's take a look at the math and compare to the other set. The base roll once again is 225, but now we have the 3-piece of Rey Dau, so that's a 5% damage increase, bringing us to 236. Then we have Counter Strike 3, so 25 there. We still have Agitator 5, and we're again assuming a 65% uptime, so 13 roll there, bringing us to 274. Multiply that by 32% from White Sharpness, that brings us to 362. We have 88% assumed affinity, reliable affinity, thanks to Max Might, the Artian base, just 5% from Weakness Exploit 1, the familiar antivirus, Agitator 5 with 65% uptime is still 10%, and then we're taking 13% from Latent Power 2 with the assumed 66% uptime. That is reliable because we have the 2-piece of Rey Dau to increase the uptime of Latent Power, and it's based off the activation of being near a monster for enough time. This uptime will go up if you take hits throughout the fight and activate it through damage. But we're not going to base the math off that, so 66% uptime. So that brings us to that total of 88% affinity. We're still assuming 5 crit boosts for this math to make a fair comparison to the other set. So a 40% damage increase on the crits, but 88% affinity, it's more like 35.2% damage increase. So we multiply that by the 362 to bring us to 489 effective roar. That's right, the Latent Power Set has 5 more effective roar than the Title Update 1 set. It is indeed more effective DPS, and as I've said, the effective DPS will go up if you're activating Latent Power effectively by taking hits at the right time. I don't recommend you do that, it'll just happen naturally, but even without thinking about that, it's still better, which we think is pretty good for the update. But there you have it. Those are the 2 main sets we suggest you run. Naturally, if you're not willing to engage with Latent Power, then the Title Update 1 set from before is still going to be the best. But I do hope we've properly shown how Latent Power has serious potential and will be quite beneficial. It does provide you with slightly more effective roll. Either way, it's not a massive update for Switch Axe for AT Rey. I definitely expect bigger changes in Title Update 2. Until next time then, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.